exactly happened or what transpired when he went there, but essentially they robbed some people. They robbed Gucci. They robbed some of those guys. I think one of the guys maybe even got choked out. I don't remember the exact details of what happened, but there was some violence that was involved as well. There was different guns, and ultimately they tried to get Gucci, or I believe they did get Gucci to sign a new contract. Which, if we had to guess, it must have been a better contract. I don't know the details.
Well, I think he wanted to get out. I think he wanted to get out of his deal. So he was trying to get
Okay,
Gucci to like basically, I guess, terminate the contract, right? So basically, get out of the deal, whatever the deal is, whatever deal he was in. I think you said in 2020 he signed to the label. Whatever deal he was in from then, he was trying to get out of it. And I guess Gucci was like, "No, that's not how." I mean, we know how contracts. That's not how contracts work, right? You can't just exit out of it when you want to. Uh, and I guess he thought he was in the 90s. He like we don't have cameras around. We can get out of this. And he thought he can get out of that in that way. He obviously don't know the law because you can't coerce someone into signing a contract. That immediately is going to void that. So as far as I know, I think he probably still signed to Gucci. So his music probably going crazy right now. So Gucci is monetizing essentially probably his music while he's sitting behind bars waiting for this case to play out.
look. Let's just jump out there and say it. This guy is an idiot. I mean, this is got to be one of the dumbest guys that we have seen in decades. He does not care about himself. He does not care about his family. He does not care about Gucci or the label. This guy just does not care. He is probably a little slow. I'll just be honest. He's probably just a little slow. Let's not even like we got to be honest about this, right? You already were under. Here's the thing, right? This whole thing about I'm breaking the law, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I get all that. I get all that. I understand it. We understand it. We know different people. We understand this, right? But once you got the first federal charge, that's when you sober up, right? Like you gotta sober up after that first federal charge. But it's not the state. Correct me, guys, if I'm wrong. It wasn't the state. It was federal.
For sure. But you gotta examine this through the eye of a criminal.
Go ahead, say it. Go ahead.
No, because perspective. I think perspective is everything. You know what I'm saying? Okay. I think perspective is everything. From where he from, and again, I'm not caping for what he did. Obviously, what he did is extremely stupid. But this is my rationale for how he see it. Where he from the streets. And so, it could have been agreements that were made that were broken between him and Gucci. It could have been disagreements. It could have been agreements in the contract that weren't fulfilled correctly. We know that happens all the time with artists. You know what I'm saying? Where they have disagreements with their label, things that they want to do that aren't done because he didn't properly read it or examine it. I mean, that's the narrative in the music industry. We know that to be true. So, I mean, from his perspective, and plus the time he did in the feds, he probably like, bro, that's a slap on the wrist for think about all the crime he's done that he ain't never been held accountable to.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's probably a lot, without a doubt. Right? So the time he did doing the feds is probably like nothing to him. Even, in fact, the time he probably thinking about sitting out for doing this is probably nothing to him relative to the reward, which is, I don't want to be signed to this nigga no more. I'm hotter than ever right now. My name bigger than ever right now. I can move units. His first day out song on YouTube did like over 50 million views just for the video. So like he hot right now. The pipe is hot. You know what I'm saying? There's money on the table. He got to feed his family. And this is all he know how to do other than the street shit, which he probably really trying to get out of to really take this to the next level. But Gucci holding him back.
Well, hold up. Because one of the things I heard here too. Yeah, one of the things I heard here too was like he actually had a better deal. So another record label came to him offering him a better deal.
Of course.
Given he was in, this contract, he couldn't take advantage of it. And I think the number that was reported was like there's like a $10 million like sign-on bonus or something, if he was to take that deal. So
Okay.
Mentality matters here.
Okay.
A couple years for $10 million. I mean, who's to say that the net present value of that money is going to be the same then, right? But he did come out hotter than he was before he went in there. That's for sure.
Okay. So I can't argue with a different perspective. A different perspective exists, right? I can't argue with a different perspective. There's definitely a way that he saw it, which created the action that we all are observing and discussing. Correct. So I understand that. And I'm assuming I'm not the only one. So I was not born and raised in the streets, I was born in Detroit, Michigan. I was raised in Farmington Hills. I grew up primarily in the suburbs. Now, when it comes to my family, I have family who have been killed in the streets, and I have family that have been in prison. Now, from my observations, from cousins or uncles, now that I think about it, no woman that I can think of, but I don't know what that says. But from my observations, it doesn't make sense. Now, is there a perspective? And after they've served different times, and for some people, like the life thing, but the conclusion that I've always came to is that ultimately it's a perspective that doesn't value your own life, right? So because the thing about it is this: okay, you're from the streets, so you believe that if somebody does this, you got to do this. Somebody does that, you got to do this. Somebody like there's all these different codes, right? And I see that, but the thing that I always think about is that when I go work at a corporate job, the people I work with don't operate under the same code that I grew up with. And I didn't come from, I don't got to be from the streets. But ultimately, if I chose to play a certain game, then I got to play by those rules. Otherwise, I will lose my livelihood. In his case, Dre, he's come out of prison, federal prison, and he's hot. In this case, to me, it sounds a little bit more like greed than it does about like principle standing. You're hot, you're doing well. Gucci's making a lot off of it. You do not like that. As Brylan mentioned, now there's somebody else coming with the deal, and now you want to get out of it because you want the money. But here's the thing. You chose to sign to a record label. So then now you have chose to play a different game. And additionally, that greed of, look, I want to handle this. And clearly it backfired. It clearly backfired because I guess maybe he thought nobody was going to tell. I guess he thought that, and maybe we could talk about that, but I guess he thought nobody was going to tell. I guess he thought he could get away with this, etc. I don't know really because he's on house arrest. So I guess I still don't even understand how, if you're on house arrest, did you think they weren't going to track it? Or, and then also these days, what I've been seeing is that the federal government has not been playing recently when it comes to rappers and entertainers, these people who have not been held accountable. They actually try to give people chances. I've been seeing that. You see people like Gunna who's portraying street. I don't know if he's from the streets. I don't know what he does in the streets or if he has done things in the streets. If I had to guess, he probably has dibbled and dabbled, but maybe not fully embraced it. Gunna got caught up with YSL. He got caught up with Young Thug. And when it came down to it, he said, look, I'm not choosing the streets. I choose me. I choose me. I choose my family. I choose my friends. I choose my health. And now he's been hot. He's doing all these things, etc. He's showing a different way. Now, mind you, Gunna is not Pooh Shiesty. He's not. Those are not the. But
he used to be.
Still, I mean,
nah, but see,
Gunna
not from the street though. He not from the streets. Not from the same streets that Pooh Shiesty from.
No, not at all. I'm not saying that. But we gotta say this. Okay, so Brylan, one thing that Brylan did say though is the Gucci snitch, right? The Gucci snitch. And look, I think Gucci did snitch. I think he had no choice. I think Gucci's in a position where what do people want him to do? Now, mind you, I don't think he said that much because there's really not much to say. You get robbed. People are getting, he created a huge situation where I can't see how he can't say anything when the police show up. He's going to have to say something. Now, I don't know what he said, but it seems like based on what I'm seeing online is that he said a little bit, but other people that he was with, the bodyguards, etc., said a lot more. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
So if that stands for something, then, people should look at that. But from what I can see, if you're not supposed to say anything at all, then yes, Gucci did snitch. But if it's just a matter of he had to say what we could all see with our own eyes, then I don't know.
So let me ask this question, right? Because we're dealing with two different Gucci's now. Like we all remember Ice Cream Man Gucci, from the early days. But now we have clone Gucci. For the folks that don't understand that, go do your research. And this Gucci got a lot more money. And so when does snitching become okay? That's the question.
It doesn't in the streets. Based on what I see, and this is what I see people saying. I'm not in the streets. I'm in corporate. I'm in tech. I'm in business. I clean. Based on what I see, there's no such thing as if you want to be associated with the streets. Now, if he's saying that I am away from that, I think it is okay.
But I think Gucci's still in the streets. Look at who his artists are.
He has
He's
to
in
be.
there
How do you source that type of talent?
because it comes to him. It comes to him. You see his catalog. You see his catalog.
Come on.
Hey, Dre got
There's some organic something happening there where he going out and sourcing these artists. Go look at his record label. A lot of people on his record label either dead or they're in jail. Very few people have survived Gucci's record label.
You think he's in the streets?
You gotta be to manage that type of talent, to manage those type of artists, to even work with that type of talent. You gotta be. And I'm not saying let me clarify. Let me clarify what I mean by in the streets. I'm not saying Gucci's standing on the corner slinging rocks and selling dope. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is he has relationships with people who are in the streets. He is around people who are in the streets. You are who you around. I mean, you can't be around people in the streets and say you're not in the streets. Like, I mean, either you in or you out. You know, again, he may be distant from some of the criminal behavior, but that doesn't mean that he not still tapped into the streets. I find it hard to believe that you can sign these type of artists, produce this type of music, and then say, "Oh yeah, I'm not in the streets." Well, then how do you make such a good product? Like, I just find that hard to believe. Now, if he was signing like Justin Bieber, you know what I'm saying? If he was working with Ariana Grande, you know, if those are the type of artists he was signing, then I'm like, okay, cool, that makes sense. But bro, you got Pooh Shiesty signed to your record label. I mean, come on, like. It's hard to be around that to me and be like, you're not part of the street. That's just my take on it. But nevertheless, that doesn't mean Gucci shouldn't snitch or whatever the case may be. I mean, the man almost lost his life potentially. He got a family. He got kids. He got to get back home.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's really what we're dealing with here. So in my mind, it's not even about the street code. But my thing is, he is part of the streets, and I think the way Pooh Shiesty see it is like, nigga, you speak the same code. So unlike what you said, Rodney, which is like, yo, I work in corporate, we don't speak the same code. Pooh Shiesty like, nigga, no, we speak the same code. We speak the same language. And then on top of that, you got me in a fucking predatory contract. That's not right either. We know that's how the music business is. That doesn't make it right. That doesn't make these contracts right. You know what I'm saying? Just because that's just the way it is. And these contracts are predatory. And if you start looking at the numbers, Pooh Shiesty like, nigga, I'm out here busting my ass on the road doing this X, Y, and Z, and you just raking in this and that, and you're not even willing to renegotiate. When I'm at the height of my career, which usually artists are in a position to renegotiate deals when they are at the height of their career. And it's like, you strong arming me? You know what I'm saying? You're from the same place I'm from. So it's like, no, we got to handle this a different way now.
It sounds like Dre supports what he did. Dre.
I don't support it. I understand it.
Okay.
That's it. I don't support it. I just understand where the mentality comes from. And I just understand the core principles of like, nigga, we from the same place. I'm trying to get bread to feed my family just like you are. And you fucking raping me hand over fist. We got to change that. And either we're going to change it constructively or we're going to have to change it a different way. I resonate with that.
It just seems like, though, that to me, once you have gotten into the music business, you are now in the music business. And to me, that is corporate. You can't run into a corporate office. So, for example, I know he may not look at it like that, but if that's a studio that Gucci is renting through business funds, 1017, whatever it is, and you run up in there, that's business. Like, that's business. That's corporate. Now, he may not look at it like that because maybe the environment doesn't look like that. Who knows how the studio is being run? So maybe he's not professional. So I don't know how Gucci operates anymore because he seems very clean these days. So I don't know how he really operates. He seems like he drink water, he eat fruit. You know, he seemed like he work out. Like, he seems like he cleaned up his act. He is not he's not as dysfunctional as he was before. He's not the guy who's, you know, getting tattooed randomly, the guy with the severe mental health issues, the guy who is doing Molly every other day, drinking every other day. He's not that anymore. So now he does still profit off that because his whole catalog. So from my perspective, I'm like, okay, he's in a position where he's not trying to go back to where he was at. He's cleaned up his act, etc. At the same time, he has a whole catalog of street shit, basically. And to me, I do see what you're saying, that he might actually still be involved in some of that stuff, not from like a criminal standpoint, but I also think that it's possible that he's really not. Like, I think that if you have that much of a catalog and you're that much of a street legend and you're that much of a hip hop legend, that stuff could just come to you. And you may not be going over to, you may not be going to certain areas. You may not be going, like, now you might be inviting that a little bit into your space because those people are bringing some of that. But I guess, and that is a risk to him though, by dealing, like, so don't get it twisted. Gucci is playing a dumb game because he knows the type of people he is dealing with. So he's not necessarily all hands clean, like he's some victim. He knows the type of people he was dealing with. And also, like you said, he put him in a predatory contract. And basically, Gucci is saying, this is business. This is business. And then what Pooh is saying is, put that business to the side. Put business to the side. And I understand that. It's just that when I start to think about the music business, I think about corporate, I think about whatever it is. Once you get into you start dealing with that system that we deal with, that system, I start to feel that the game that you start playing at that part becomes more so, if you care about your freedom, then you might want to try to find a different way. Because at the end of the day, you go to prison, and now, no matter how hot he was, he's messed that up, and he is looking at a lot of time. Because when you get let out early, and then you prove to the judge, and you prove to everybody that lets you out, that you don't give a fuck about anything that they were talking about, they could have kept you in there that entire time. They could have done all that stuff. And they let you out because you're a young man, and they want to give you an opportunity to come out and clean up your act and fix your life. That's what they're trying to do. He's so far gone that he doesn't care about his life. He clearly doesn't care about it. And I understand where he's coming from, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, we can understand something, but I can't stamp that. I just can't stamp it. That's all. I understand it. I just can't stamp it because we need young people who are talented, who are hot and doing all these things to say, you know what? Keep that self-control. Keep that self-control. Okay, Gucci fucking you over. Okay, cool. Hold that tight. Hold that tight. You know what I'm saying? One day you'll get back. But just don't get back like that. Don't get back like that. Like, just hold tight.
So hold on. There's this lyric, because I don't know if after this situation, y'all went back and listened to the First Day Out.
Of course.
Lyrics.
Multiple times.
Bro, this one stands out to me where he was like, he said, unfortunately, I'm CEO and a top shooter for my gang. My grandma told me keep my grass low the whole time. I'm the snake. Smelled his plot from like 3 miles away. He can't outsnake a snake. I ain't choose the streets. They chose me. Stepping on shit my lane. I ain't choose rap. It chose me. My name held too much weight. Type of influence I got where I'm from. Yo Gotti carrying a Drake. I'm telling you, bro. Like, because and the reason why I bring up those lyrics is like there was a live video recently of Pooh Shiesty. Because mind you, this happened. This robbery stuff happened in January. We're just finding out about it 4 months. 4 months has passed now that we found out about it. And so he made a live and he was talking about it. And he was alluding to, he was like, this was the snake that I was talking about, like all this stuff. And he was, to your point, around like, Gucci being in the streets. Pooh Shiesty has said multiple times that he never wanted to be a rapper. Like, he was really a street dude.
Okay.
And he got put in a position. And so I do think, I think where I would kind of push back, and then we probably can move on, is like, I do think environment plays a huge part. And while, yes, it's the music business, the artist does not usually operate in the corporate music business. And most of the time, like, those studio environments that they're in, like, that's their office.
Yeah. The studio environments they're not necessarily the most professional. We get that.
I think environment is everything, bro. It shit. That's why I'm like, I understand where he's coming from. You know what I'm saying? It's not about it being right or not. I get that. He's not thinking about like his freedom. He's not thinking about that. He's thinking about his respect. Honestly, he really is. He's thinking about his respect. Yeah. He's thinking about the bread that he can secure from his family, because he probably seeing real money right now that he probably never seen before, especially legally. You know what I'm saying? Because I think he's going on tours. He getting booked. I mean, the nigga's going crazy right now. So he's seeing real money that he never seen before.
Oh, you know what?
So I get that. So I mean, again, I don't know how this is gonna play out. We're gonna let it play out the way it is. I mean, there's been other federal cases that I thought was slam dunks. I thought all the evidence was aligned, and somehow
if he beats the case,
rappers been able to wiggle their way out. So I don't know if it's a slam dunk. It is what it is. I'm just saying he makes good music. Hopefully he has some fire.
If he beats the case, then I guess maybe it was worth the shot. If he beats the case, and sometimes these cases are kind of, like you said, that they're not as strong as they seem on the surface. So maybe he might be able to beat the case.
Well,
but
all he needs.
The question though, do you guys think though that he will regret this 5 years, 10 years down the line? Yeah. So yeah, we can all understand it. It doesn't take. It's not hard to. Maybe for some people that might be listening, and I mean, it just really depends on the demographic of who's listening. But it's clear to understand. But I'm wondering though, is this the type of thing that you regret if they hit you with 10 years? And if that's the case, then it's like, okay, we understand it. But it's like, for example, if I find out, or somebody finds out that somebody slapped their daughter, she's 10 years old, and it's a grown man, and he walks up, he kills the guy. Oh yeah, we understand that. Yeah, we understand that. We understand, if somebody, hurt that person's daughter, so that's why he snapped, and maybe he hit him too hard, killed him. We understand what happened. But you ask that guy 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, when he's no longer, like, you ask that guy, I wonder what they think. Do they think that the response, because it's not a matter of whether or not something should have been done. There was clearly a disrespect, and there clearly was something bad that there's clearly, he felt challenged as a man. He felt like he was disrespected as a man.
Well, hold on. I'm looking at the Complex article. They said Complex is reporting that Gucci made $24 million off of Pooh Shiesty while he was in jail.
Yeah. Like, yeah, bro, what are we talking about, bro? Like, I get the logical brain side of it. Will he regret it? Maybe he will, but is it worth it for him? Bro, have you ever talked to somebody who is institutionalized, bro? Who have been in and out of prison, bro? Okay. That some individuals, bro, who are like that are not thinking about that.
I don't need to be educated on that though.
About thinking about I'm not educating you, I'm educating those who are listening. I'm talking to the people who are listening, which is because some people might not know that. Okay.
That's
so
fair.
You're different.
Fair.
You got people in your family who've been in prison, so do I. So some people might not have ever been around people who are like that, who think like fucking criminals, who are criminally minded, who are sick in the mind, who operate like criminals. And so for some of those people, they might look at this and be like, fucking 10 years, I'll do that shit. I'll do it. No problem.
They might.
Because inside prison, they got a whole ecosystem of people. They got a whole comfort. They got protection, all of that shit like that. And so it's a whole different level. So for us who not institutionalized, who are not criminalized mentally, hell no. Of course not. Of course. But also, I didn't grow up like Pooh Shiesty in the streets where his parents, his dad was in prison. Fucking his granddad was probably in prison. All his uncles probably was in prison. His cousins probably was in prison or shot and killed. And so to him, that's literally what he knows. And so I'm not trying to examine this from like my perspective, because my perspective is a whole different view. I'm looking at it like, if I'm him and I'm in the streets and I know some nigga making $24 million off of me and I haven't made nothing off of that shit, something got to be done about that. What it is,
no, I understand that.
What it is different. But I'm just saying, I think everybody could rationalize that. But okay, something got to be done. And then also too, I'll just say this: we haven't talked about it. We don't know what Gucci's response was. It could have been the corporate response, like, "Oh, you know what? Let me go see what I could do," or it could have been, "Nigga, fuck you. You signed this shit. We about to run it up on you. I ain't changing shit, nigga. You locked into this shit forever." We don't know what the response could have been. We don't know. You know what I'm saying? And again, I'm not saying that makes anything right. I've already said I don't stand by what Pooh Shiesty said. But again, this is street level code. And I think it's mentally, you have to walk through that differently. That's just how I think.
Yeah.
Did y'all see the recent Big Meech podcast? Did y'all see what he said on the podcast?
No, I didn't even know Big Meech had a podcast.
I saw highlights.
Yeah. So he recently did a podcast with V's, another rapper out of Detroit. But I thought his perspective was very interesting on how like people like in those type of situations, making that kind of money, think about these moments. And what he said was, he really called out the point that like when him and BMF was really like running things, you know, he was really like the Black Pablo Escobar. Like homie was doing, you know, close to billions of dollars in revenue. And he was like, you know, the feds never had anything on me. And I had to go look it up. I'm like, how'd you go to jail then if they didn't have anything on you? Mind you, they really never, the feds never had any like, evidence of him actually being the one that sell drugs. It was just like tell. But what he ended up saying was he was like, it was a blessing in disguise because he was like, the thought that he had in prison was that the time that he was doing was for everything he didn't get caught. And he was like, didn't get caught for. And I feel like a lot of like we've all done bad shit. And so it's like one of those things where like going back to your question, 10 years from now, will Pooh feel some type of way? I don't think so, because the amount of shit this nigga probably has gotten away with compared to like what we know.
The body.
Chalk that. And guess what?
It's a reason why he's fearless.
They can't freeze any of my assets or money. So that bitch is going to continue to grow. I'm coming out on top.
They can't.
No, nigga, unless it's attached to the crime. So yes, like they'll probably like anything that would probably come after this force signed to end the contract, maybe. But even that is going to legally be fault. But to Dre's point around homie is doing numbers right now. Like I had to look this up. Homie is doing 10 million streams a day.
That's crazy.
That's all money going to him. The feds can't freeze that, bro, because that's not involved in a crime.
And it's a street nigga from Memphis, nigga. I don't know if y'all been to Memphis. I've been to Memphis a lot. That shit is rough. I grew up in the street. I grew up in Detroit, which I would consider Detroit a rough place to grow up. Memphis is rough, a rough ass place. So for that nigga to make it out of Memphis and to be making millions of dollars, I mean, not everybody gets that opportunity. Yeah, and unfortunately, he might have fucked it up for himself. But you know what I'm saying? Not everybody at least hits that position.
But if he's a millionaire in jail, bro, he's living differently. Living. That's what the audience needs to understand.
Yeah, but the audience also needs to understand that people get stabbed in prison, people get raped in prison, people get killed 100%. In prison, and unfortunately, prison is some place where there's nobody's going to protect you. There's no safety.
Sure. But if you go look at the people who that happens to, 9 times out of 10, it ain't the niggas with money. Tory Lanez, 1 out of what millions of people that have been in jail. Like, no, but
I'm not talking about I'm just saying, like, you said people with money, so yeah.
I'm talking even, so Tory Lanez is one, but I'm sure there have been other people with money in jail. Like, because what I equate having money in jail to is if you can get someone to put money on your commissary, if you can get someone to put money on your books, you are better than 99% of niggas in there. And you literally, the leverage that you have is different.
Yes, yeah, for sure. One thing that I've thought about as you guys were kind of talking a bit is like this, as Dre was saying, like this, the mind of somebody who's been institutionalized. And unfortunately, that for me, definitely, I have an older brother that has been in and out of prison almost his entire life. Most of you don't know of him, and since he was young, he had always been in these situations. And for me, that was a very challenging thing, because then, for me, it's just challenging, right? And I've, in my life, I've tried to, my family, but then also me personally, I've tried to do a lot to try to turn that around in some way, whether it's financially or businesses or helping with businesses or whatever it is. And it's something I don't really talk about that often, but it's something that when I hear the mindset of somebody who's institutionalized, et cetera, I really get it and I really understand it. And it's really, it's one of those things where I don't really know how to react to a lot of this stuff, because on one hand, I'm saying I get it. Unfortunately, actually, it's one of those things that I know a little bit too personally. But then I also think, like, because I didn't grow up that way, but my brother was somebody who, I mean, I just can't even. It's just the stuff, just. To put it lightly, one thing was that he got expelled from the schools in Michigan just from when he was a teenager, bringing guns to school, and that's the thing, like that's like, and that's just like one of many things across 30 years that I've been, I think me personally, I start to look at that and I say, okay, it's hard because I understand that we grew up differently, but then I'm also like, at some point though, like, you have a wife, you have kids, etc. And the way that you're living, it's just it's just not right. It's just not right. And I understand there's something going on and I don't really know what to do about that. And it's not like we got to go into a whole thing about, what to do about that. Maybe that's a podcast that is important to talk about is, prison reform and rehabilitation and how people can go back out after having felonies and having mistakes that they've made in their life, and how they can go back out without this mentality of a criminal, of this mentality of violence, this mentality of scheming and doing all doing crimes, etc. This mentality of it's a horrible mentality, and I really just I don't know, it's just something that's kind of it's when I hear something like this, I'm like, it's so dumb, but I get it too. So I always get conflicted about it. And honestly, I hope that we can find something that can help people, because all I see is somebody who, I understand the situation, but all I see is just dang, okay, I get it, but it's just man, I wish that he could have. I think that Gucci would have took that money, and I think that if with a different mindset, although I understand he doesn't have it, that he could have probably ate that loss, and he could have found a different way. And I also think he's extremely talented, and I think that that 24 million is a small bucket out of the 240, maybe 300 million he might be able to make in his life. And I just think that it's kind of it doesn't feel good to kind of see that. But I mean, since that kind of took a kind of a downturn, though, I would say, I guess this is not good news either. We talked about this a little bit before we started the podcast, but there's been a series of events with Iran, right? And it started off earlier today, I think sometime in the morning or afternoon. I think maybe the afternoon. Trump on Truth Social, he started off the paragraph with, "A whole civilization will die tonight." Do I need to say anything? Else? I mean, there's more, but
I guess there is good news though, because according to Trump, I mean, he was going to wipe away the civilization, I think 8 p.m. Eastern time, which would be in the next 4 minutes. And right before the pod, he came out, or he didn't come out. I saw the reports. I don't know if it's been confirmed, but he essentially have extended the deadline by 2 weeks per a recommendation from the Pakistani prime minister. So my understanding is the Pakistani prime minister was basically trying to negotiate with Trump and Trump deputies for the last couple of days and propose a list of things for a ceasefire. I don't know if the ceasefire is actually going to happen, but effectively he was trying to just say, hey, let's just give another 2 weeks to get the Strait open before we go to the plan of destruction. So it seemed like he's just kind of obliging to that request, sort of say. So I would say that is good news, because the way he was talking, I think the whole world was on pins and needles thinking we getting ready to go into some different escalation in the war. And I guess, again, based on that news that came out breaking right before we started the pod, it looks like that is not going to happen, at least within the next 2 weeks, if Trump decides to keep his word. But at least it looks like tonight things have been kind of put on pause. So I would say that's incredible news, because I was deeply disturbed by that tweet. I thought it was just completely unprecedented. You know what's crazy? I don't even have a problem with him feeling that way or even saying it behind scenes, because I imagine there's a lot of conversation that happens behind scenes, just like you have in a boardroom, right? There's negotiating, there's people say stuff, people get angry, you know what I'm saying? You say something personal. I expect that debate and conversation to just take place behind the scenes. No problem, no foul. Say whatever you want. But I think to say that publicly as the president of the United States, I actually think that is a disgust on America. And I don't think it represents the American sentiment at all. And I think America as a country, while we support the right wars and support having a strong military, clearly I think all of us are cool with us having a strong military. I don't think any of us would support us just indiscriminately bombing civilians and killing a bunch of innocent people for the sake of nothing. I don't think anybody would be okay with that. So I don't know. I was just sickened by that whole thing. But I'm thankful that he at least gave another 2 weeks. What will come from that? Obviously, it's hard to determine. Shit, hopefully we can sleep tonight at least. That was kind of scary. I'm not even gonna lie. I didn't want to see that. I'm like, I hope the news organization, if he were gonna do that, I was like, I hope the news does not report on that. I'm like, that's just going to send the world into chaos. I mean, can you imagine seeing just millions of people dying on world news like that?
Yeah, I think I'm going to be honest. This is where my skeptical hat comes on, right? And part of the reason why my skeptical hat is on in this moment is we've seen this before, right? So this isn't the first time that Trump has kind of made these type of threats. And then kind of set these deadlines only to backtrack, right? The first one actually started in March. So March 21st was the first time he set the deadline. He said the deadline was March 23rd. Nothing happened. The Strait was not opened. Mm-hmm. Then March 26th, he set deadline number 2. either open it up or we're going to bomb your infrastructure. They did bomb the infrastructure, but the strait was not open. And then you get March 30th, that comes in, actually April 1st. So he comes in April 1st and he says, this was the first time he came out and said, we're willing to consider a ceasefire, but only after the Strait of Hormuz has opened. Set a date, 48 hours, if you remember that Truth Social, where all hell will be faced. That deadline hit. Nothing happened. And then you got Easter, so April 5th. And that's where the first tweet came, where he said Tuesday, 8 p.m., this shit needs to be open. Yesterday, he doubled down. Today was the day, and that's when he kind of gave the civilization. But he's had he's essentially set 4 deadlines that have not been respected. And I think the reason why this timeline is extremely important is because when you think about the context or the frame at which this whole situation exists, it's a behemoth versus someone who is weak. It's David versus Goliath, right? And the U.S. is essentially, I would say, winning this war militarily, right? Questions, like, everybody knows this. You can see the video, we are destroying them. But I would say strategically, I would also say we're on the verge economically, but more importantly, from a credibility standpoint. I think the U.S. credibility is at the heart of all of this right now. And if our credibility goes, our dollar goes. If our dollar goes, I'm telling you right now, it's going to accelerate the whole China BRICS. We don't have to kind of get into that. But I think right now you have Trump looking like a fool because Iran, like we were talking about this on the pod before, Iran's strategy is to outlast. It's a strategy of endurance. And their whole strategy is to push the U.S. to escalate because it takes away resources from other areas for their allies. But furthermore, it hits at the credibility because, as you can tell from when he went to NATO, he went to all our quote unquote allies and none of them showed up because they don't want to. They don't want to. And so, yeah, even seeing this type of tweet go out, right, this morning, very alarming, right? Because I think I dropped this in a group chat. When you say you're going to wipe a civilization off the planet, I think there's probably only 2 ways you can do that, either with a bioweapon or a nuclear weapon, right? So I think that's why you have people taking it serious.
Yeah,
taking it serious.
I think his tone was just different this time. I think the message, based on to your point, I think was always consistent along the way, right? We're going to do this, and if you don't do this, we're going to do this if you don't do this. Yeah. I think what made this one a little bit different, at least what resonated differently for me, was just the tone of that message. Like, to your point, when you say you're going to wipe out a civilization, and then not only did he say that, I mean, he was like using curse words. We've never heard a president really talk like that before. Again, publicly. Privately, they probably all talk like this, but out publicly, you know what I'm saying? Like, just the stuff he said. I mean, it was just like the tone in it was just it was just a little bit different. I mean, can his tone escalate even more than what it already has? Maybe he's already reached that max capacity now. So anything he says going forward would just be taken with a grain of salt, to your point. But I think his tone. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I think the scary part about that is maybe he feels that sentiment because we know how tapped in Trump is to his public image, right? And so to save face, will he do something extreme, right? Will he say, you know what? All right, they think I'm bluffing. Fucking do it.
Yeah,
he could.
Yeah.
And there is no question that militarily we can do what we want. I mean, I think every public analyst I've seen out there has agreed. The U.S. has the capabilities to do exactly what he said he wanted to do. Bomb every bridge, bomb every power facility. We could do it. It is no question, can we do it? It could be done. Yeah. So now it's just a matter of if he feels like, you know what, y'all think I'm bluffing? Y'all think I'm not going to do it? Okay. Yeah. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it on my time. I'm going to do it on my terms. I'm going to do it under the covers of darkness when it's unanticipated. Nobody's going to know. So I don't know. I still think about that. I don't know. I mean, we know Trump is a little bit deranged, so it's kind of hard to tell what he's thinking. I mean, we know what he's thinking because of what he says, but we don't necessarily know when he's going to carry out some specific action, right?
Yeah, that's interesting, guys. When I first saw the tweet from, or I guess it was a post on Truth Social, I definitely have this detachment on social media to where a lot of things, and probably just over time, just because social media can have so many different things that come up and make you feel some type of way, I really didn't feel anything. and my mind was in a very, very logical standpoint, and I was concerned about the last part that Dre said about the saving face part. I did think he was bluffing, but I also thought that there was potentially a risk on him feeling like, okay, y'all don't take me serious. I thought there was an ego risk basically. So I thought that was a risk, but I didn't feel, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I felt very cold. I felt really cold, very calculating. I didn't really feel much when I saw this. I could tell though that a lot of people did, and I could, just by the way that people were popping out, etc. And I understand because it's very strong, and I think that the way my mind rationalized that was just that at the end of the day, he's the president. At the end of the day, whether I thought he was bluffing or not, and whether Brylan was right that he's constantly moving the goalpost, he's the president, so people do take him serious. And I know people from Iran that were not taking those things lightly either. I understand that because at the end of the day, he could do it, he may not do it. Is he serious? Is he not serious? And at the end of the day, when somebody's crazy, I don't think they should play that credit play. So, Marlon, if they're trying to reduce Trump's credibility, I just don't think they should do it.
No, I don't think it's not Trump's credibility. It's the U.S. credibility.
I don't think. Okay, well, isn't it connected to what Trump is saying?
It is, but it's because he represents.
Okay,
he's representing the U.S.
Okay, in this case, the way what I'm speaking about is I'm pretty much saying that, which is that if they're trying to lower the U.S.'s credibility, through Trump, I don't think that they should do that because Trump may not. When somebody's crazy, don't try them. When somebody's crazy, just don't try them. Don't mess with them. Don't mess with them. You might be trying to do this and do this. If he's just crazy, it may not go. Which you're reducing credibility for this aspect and for this reason. Just stay still. This guy's crazy. Nobody move. It's all just
I think they have a tolerance for suffering that's different than how we think about suffering in the U.S. You know what I'm saying? We have a different standard of how we think about living. We have a different philosophy and ideology on life. You know what I'm saying? We have a different stance on religion. Again, America's made up of many different religions, so it's not homogenous in that sense. But it is a difference in just how we think about suffering, a little bit different. And so I think from their standpoint,
not Pooh
That's true. I think in their standpoint, I think they're willing to like Brylan said, they're willing to wait this thing out. And I do think the destabilization of the U.S. credibility is an important lever point. Why? Because the whole world is based on global security is based on allies, right? The whole idea of the whole principle of security. And again, the U.S. is strike a little bit different because of literally our location, right? That's one of the things that saved us in the World War II. In every war, there has been the fact that you haven't seen bombings of American factories.
You got water on both sides.
Yeah, that plays a huge role. But for a lot of the rest of the world, that peace and mind of security, you go to a place like UK, it's a small ass island. You go to France is small. Spain, small. Italy, small. These small nations where you can literally have somebody like Germany come in and take. I mean, we know the history. My point is the whole idea of global security to me relies based on credibility and you doing what you say you're going to do. Right. And I trust that you're going to do what you say you're going to do when the time comes, even if it's 70 years from now, 80 years from now, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, I expect you to do what you say you're going to do. And if at any point that starts to become questionable, then it's only right for me to then decide, well, then how do I realign myself with another ally where that security is a little bit more safe, sort of say. So it could be like, okay, well, then do we go to China? Do we go to Russia? We got to, maybe we need to talk to some other global superpower. Brylan kind of already alluded to that with the BRICS organization in terms of like payment flow. There's already been some actions by other countries to try to get some of the Gulf countries to not take US dollar for oil. That's one of the biggest reasons why US has this dominance is because right now it is required for the most part, if you want to buy oil, you have to buy it in US dollars. Well, if that changes, then that completely changes how we fund our military. That completely changes how we fund overseas bases. That completely changes a lot of things. A lot of Americans don't realize that. But a lot of that whole agreement structure is based on the principle of alliances and you doing what you say. And so the moment you start to chip away at that, that does start to have some of those allies start to, again, go have other conversations behind closed doors where maybe the U.S. isn't involved in it, right? Or go look at other strategic partners where the U.S. isn't involved in it. And right now, what Iran is trying to do from a principle standpoint is really trying to get all of those Gulf countries, including Saudi Arabia, to say, why are y'all letting the U.S. interfere in y'all politics? Why are y'all letting the U.S. dictate how y'all do investments, how y'all security, energy, all of that stuff is controlled by the U.S.? Why would y'all want that? Which is a very fair question, because I think we will be asking the same thing as America if we saw Russia come into our backyard, you know what I'm saying, doing the same thing in the Caribbean. I think we probably would be like, why would y'all let them do this? You know what I'm saying? We'd be having that same conversation. So I do think there's something to that. Again, whether they outlast Trump, I don't know. It's always hard to predict. But I do think it's very fascinating how these global politics kind of play out. And I think it shows just how fragile everything is. And it literally, some of the stuff is really baked on a fucking handshake. I mean, when that starts to backtrack, I mean, you kind of get some of the things you have now. So I don't know. I find it very interesting.
Yeah. I think one thing I want to really add to this, because to the point of most people really do not understand. Yeah, I would say this whole idea of like the US dollar dominance, and everything is hinging on that, right? And so like even today, or like over the last few days, I don't know if y'all saw the headline, but France removed all their gold from US banks. That is a big deal. That is not small. Just because, essentially gold, especially in times of war, is seen as a store of value, right? I think the other thing people really have to call into question as well is the reason why credibility is also important. And we saw this a year ago when the tariffs happened, right? When countries do not find another country credible, they are less likely to want to buy your debt, so your bonds. As much as we talk about equity in America, America runs off of debt. And so literally what you have seen over the last year is slowly countries like Japan, et cetera, who used to be huge buyers of US bonds or US treasuries, have slowly started to sell more and more, right? One, because they don't know if they're going to get paid back, et cetera, et cetera. And this has trickle down effects that we don't have to unpack now, but this has serious trickle down effects on not only the economy, but eventually the American people. And so I think you kind of have both these parallels, and they're one of the same. Where if the U.S., whoever, like, and I think it's just part of history, but whoever controls the currency that the world trades in usually has military dominance. And right now, that is what is being tested, right? And I think going back to Dre's point around like just even causing a slight hesitancy, right? That's why there's there is a serious opportunity for what China, Russia, India, South Africa, what they're trying to do, right? And it's all you got to do is go pay attention to the markets. I'm sure some listeners on here have been paying attention to like gold markets. Yes, they've recently dropped, but over the last year, they went crazy. And if you go over the last 2 years, they went crazy. If you go look underneath why, is because these governments have been buying gold so they can literally store the value or use that as the store of value for the brick system that China is trying to create, right? And I think it is all trying to break away and have a little bit more independence when it comes to these decisions that the U.S. are making. And I don't know if y'all saw this came out maybe an hour before we hopped on the pod too, but Ray Dalio, who's kind of been, a large voice in the space, kind of speaking of this, changing world order. He wrote a really good, a really good post, and his whole thing was that, he feels like markets right now aren't really pricing in the truth, right? He feels like what markets are really seeing is this is going to be like a short-term conflict, where he's like, everything is pointing to this potentially being the breakout. And we can drop it, but like the things that he really pointed out that I thought were interesting, he was like, right now we have 4 active wars going on. So everybody knows about Russia, Ukraine. And then you also have Israel and Lebanon. And then you also have, Yemen and Sudan. And then, the U.S., Iran, Israel. But his whole thing was, he was like, if you look at the environment of the world right now, it looks like the environment prior to World War One and World War Two. So like that 1913 period and that late 1930s period. And so he's like, this is a very fragile time, not only for America, but for the world. But I think that's to my point of like, if I'm just going to be honest with you, I do think Trump was bluffing. You can't take it as a bluff, but I do think he was bluffing because
Yes.
the severity
Yes.
of the world, if he was to do Iran, I'm telling you right now, America would feel it very heavily. And it's not because we don't need the oil or whatever we talked about like earlier, but it's because of everything else that's interconnected to it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I agree with that point about that. You can't take it as a bluff because he's the president. I thought it was a bluff. I was fully under the belief that it was a bluff. But if you're Iran or you're anybody else, it is totally fair that you don't take it as a bluff. It's completely fair. It's so people were scrambling, tweeting impeachments, amendment, 24, whatever number that was. People were popping out, and I understood. I understood, even though I didn't feel the same way. But look, we got one more topic for this last segment, and it is around Anthropic. So we're going to go back to AI. Essentially, Anthropic is claiming.
You see how they're the topic of conversation every week?
Yeah,
it's for a reason.
So Anthropic may be the topic of conversation, but at the end of the day, who's in everybody's hands? Who's in everybody's hands? And if you can answer that honestly, then we can continue forward. But Anthropic,
who do you use?
I use everyone. That's a good question, though.
That's a very
yeah. I use everyone. No, it's not diplomatic. It's the facts. It's the evidence. I use Grok.
Let's add one word. Most.
I use for what context? See, I'm an advanced AI user. Okay, I'm an advanced AI user. I'm not basic.
You would be a good witness on the stand.
I'm advanced. Like, for what use case? Like, I use every AI every day for different use case. Every single AI I use every day. I use Gemini every day. I use Grok every day. I use Claude every day. I use ChatGPT every day. But I use them all for different purposes. All of them every day. But I would say that my home would be ChatGPT. That's the home AI. But I don't use it a ton, though. I would say I probably use Grok more because I tend to want a more unrestricted model. So Grok fits that for me more. But anyways, this segment is not about me, guys. So Claude came out with this new model, or they haven't come out with this model yet. It's called Mythos, and it's a preview. And it was announced today. And essentially, they're saying that this is their most powerful AI model. Now, I just have to say this because I'm not hating. But it is, just so people know, saying that it's your most powerful model, and also additionally, they said it's their most dangerous model. That is one way to drive hype towards a model. If you say a model is extremely dangerous, it comes off like the model is very powerful. Those two are hand in hand. Very powerful, very dangerous. So anyways, this model takes huge leaps in cybersecurity. So what I mean by that is that it can help hackers and attackers by a large margin, but it can also do the opposite. So one of the things, like a couple of the things that it discovered just in its findings were, one, like thousands of like different bugs across all different types of software online. One of the bugs was a 27-year-old bug in a very widely available version of Linux and Linux is open source, so it has been reviewed and everything almost multiple times a year, and it was never caught. So essentially, these models are finding bugs and vulnerabilities, which they call zero-day vulnerabilities. And essentially, a zero-day vulnerability is a vulnerability that the developers or the creators do not know about. It's like having a back door in your house and you don't know about it. So it's very serious. And they found other basically bugs in widely popular software. For example, there's another video software called FFmpeg or MPEG, and it's a free tool that handles video and audio. Some people might know of it. Either way, it has all these different vulnerabilities. And essentially, Anthropic is coming out and saying, hey, look, we have some very strong concerns because this model is very useful, very powerful, but we could also see and we're worried about attackers using this and being able to do these large scale AI attacks that businesses and individuals may not be able to protect themselves from. Now, to combat that, they are doing a deliberate slower release. And this slower release is meant to go to like the larger partners like JP Morgan, Google, Apple, etc., to kind of give them this kind of infrastructure for our software first. But that's the meat of it.
I think it's going to end up being great for them. I heard they are on what, like a $30 billion revenue run rate right now, which is incredible. They've added, I mean, it's just amazing to see like a company scale of this size. I think on the last part we looked up publicly how many software companies there are that are over 20 billion. It wasn't that many of them. It was only a handful. So to even get to that level is crazy in and of itself. I don't know. I'm hopeful that this product will be useful, but I mean, as I've learned from you, Rodney, there is no way to stop the hackers, the attacks. There's no 100 proof way to do it. So all you're really doing is doing mitigation work, which, I mean, there could be some value to that.
It can be.
I won't say it's valueless, but there's no 100 proof way to do it. But if it does work effectively, then this could be an interesting product line for them. Tens of billions of dollars just in and of itself. I think OpenAI is probably going to come fast following and start releasing stuff similar. I can see them kind of starting the same product track, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, because I think, not to go back into the war thing, but one of the things I was looking at is that Iran is really strong at cyber capabilities. And one of the things that they've been doing is launching an enormous amount of cyber attacks on American infrastructure, whether it be power plants, whether it be water treatment facilities. All of these systems, all of this infrastructure runs off computers. I mean, at this point, we know that, right? A lot of these data centers are running off of computers. And so
I'm more worried now.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so
They're
I think
smart.
Anything that gives American companies, more tools to help fight, these type of adversaries, I'm a huge fan for. And unfortunately, we're in a world right now where we got nation states that are coming at our American infrastructure and companies. So, I'm for whatever works, from a product standpoint.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I would say, I'm actually really curious, like when they do release these models. I'm really curious to dive just kind of into some of the like technical breakthroughs, right? Is this just the result of, models getting bigger? That's one of the things I'm going to be curious about as well.
Right.
I think the other thing too that I'll be curious about too is to see if they speak about like any of the like data mix, right? Just because it does seem, compared to like Opus, some of those benchmarks, there's like a plus, 20 like percentage improvement, right? And so there's that. And then the other thing that I'm also going to be curious about too is like, I feel like last year was like the year of like reinforcement learning, right? And so part of the reason why I'm going to be curious about these three things is because I do think it gives us, just as folks who are kind of curious about this space, some predictive power of like, how much further could this continue to go, right? I think the other thing that I'm going to be curious about too is, it almost seems like the roles have almost flipped a bit, right? Because if we remember, like just even last year or even just like the previous few years, you have never seen Anthropic like come out here and hype up a model release. Usually they just drop the model like, day of, and it's like, there's this new model. Maybe there's like some Twitter leak of like, Anthropic is, but it's not to the point of like, I would say like how OpenAI, that was part of their like marketing and kind of like growth strategy. I felt like, even to the point of, like if Anthropic dropped a model the same day, OpenAI had, a tweet, and a blog post ready to drop it kind of like the next day. And so I'm curious to see if this is like Anthropic trying to be on like the offense rather than, just being the conservative kind of like player in the space that they have been, given, I will say, their brand credibility. Yes, be on offense. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
What you trying to get at? What you trying to get at? What are you? Hey, we got like I said this a few weeks ago. Anthropic got to get to 100 bill.
I think that's fine. 100 billion is fine. It's just not what OpenAI is going to do. Like, I think Anthropic is going to be a long-lasting big company. That goes without saying. I mean, what they going to do? Fail? It's like they ain't failing. Like, they're too big. I actually do think they're too big to fail. I do believe that, actually. But I guess when you say like they're trying to be on offense, I mean, dude, do you see? I see Dario in every move they make. Conservative, slow steps. So they got this dangerous model that they're gonna slowly roll out, but they're only going to roll it out to the largest corporations who can figure out all this stuff if anything were to go wrong. So everybody else that actually would not be able to, like, they're performative, bro. Like this, just can we just look past this image that they are portraying? They are playing the same game that OpenAI is playing. They are performative. They're saying they're worried about safety and how bad it could be, but then they proceed to give it to multi-billion-dollar, some of them trillion-dollar companies before, like, and what's that going to do exactly? What exactly is that going to do as far as reducing the danger to basically the rest of the economy and the rest of the businesses and also the rest of the individuals? What exactly is that going to do? Give them an opportunity to maybe fix things, and then everybody else is free for all? Like, what exactly is the I don't get it, but it looks good. If you don't think about it, if you just read that and you just don't think about it, it sounds great, but just think about it. That don't really. So no, I don't think they're on offense. I think they're trying to play it safe. I think they're being conservative and they're rolling it out slow, and they don't want to be the. And I think also too, I might even give Dario some strategic credit, because to Dre's point, I think that this will make OpenAI jump out, and maybe that's strategic. Maybe they're coming out saying we have a powerful model and they're going to roll it out responsibly and slowly, and that's going to make OpenAI jump out, and they're just going to drop it and dump it, and it's going to be, because we all know that this model is not going to be 10 times better than something that OpenAI already has. We are like everybody's neck and neck at this point, and I can see OpenAI falling into that. I can see them responding and coming out and being a little bit more reckless. I could see them doing that. So maybe I'll give some credit on that aspect.
Well, I think OpenAI, when it comes to their strategy right now, is I do think it's flipped. And what I mean by that is, I think in like from 2023 to probably most of 2025, what you had was OpenAI capitalizing on the fact that they won the hearts and minds of the world, right? With ChatGPT. Yeah. I think you had Dario and Anthropic come out being more so the doomer, which has been their position the whole time. Yeah. But their strategy, I think at first, was one where they were potentially trying to lock themselves into a competitive position on based off of regulation, like trying to get the government to force certain things. So, to protect their kind of business. I think that has flipped. Not to say that ChatGPT is still not top of mind for most consumers, but I think given the sourness of the relationship with Anthropic and the current administration and the government, that has created an opportunity where now they have the hearts and minds, especially in this environment that we've been discussing on the pod.
Right, yeah.
So I think they're doubling down on that. But even the fact that I think OpenAI, that has switched too, because people were sour about them taking that deal with the Pentagon.
They were. Yeah.
But now you have them doubling down and releasing this policy statement or whatever, which is really just lobbying for what they want. Like, if we're going to be honest. So I think you're seeing this kind of crossover, this switch that might be happening.
Yeah, I guess if we have a few more minutes, we could talk about this proposal. If we have if we have a little bit longer here, we don't have an hour, but basically OpenAI came out with this proposal, and essentially, in short, it's basically something to help mitigate or help reduce all the damage that's going to come to AI. They believe that AI is going to replace a lot of jobs. It's going to do a lot of displacement. There may even be new jobs, but they think that transition could be bumpy. So what they're proposing is, one, they're proposing a change to taxes, right? So one of those changes is like a quote unquote robot tax. Easy way to think about it is, if you were to buy a physical robot, or if a business was to buy a fleet of physical robots and essentially replace humans for that particular job or task, then each robot would be taxed on the revenue or income that it generates, like a human would. And that can go to something in the government, taxes, etc. And essentially, you can imagine a digital form of that too, but it's just easier to think about from a robot standpoint. And then the second thing that they came up with was this idea of a public wealth fund. So if you think about the Trump accounts, which are a really good idea, and I'm not gonna lie, that's one of the more long-term things that people are going to be thanking Trump for. Trump may get like a lot of backlash now, but people who have those Trump accounts, those kids that in 18 years they get access to those accounts, they're going to be feeling pretty good. And it's going to suck for, if your parents didn't get you one of those, you're going to feel like you're not going to be happy about that because everybody had an opportunity. But essentially the Trump fund was essentially where you could start off with, I forgot how exactly it works, but you start off with a certain amount of money and the government either matches it or they automatically give every kid a certain amount of money. And it's in a safe account. It's invested. It grows over time. And you can start it off with, I think, kids under 5 years old or something along the lines of that. But OpenAI suggested a public wealth fund, which is similar to that concept, but for every citizen. So there's no age limit. And I think that is just to also allow people to benefit off all of the wealth that's going to be generated from AI. Another thing that they're suggesting is this idea of a 4-hour work week. I think everybody can agree that would be really nice. I think my theory about how that would be implemented would be basically a 32-hour limit on work. And then after that, it's overtime pay. That's the only way that I personally can see that being put into place.
Yeah.
And then another one would be increase on social benefits, so unemployment, healthcare, retraining, etc. That one's it sounds nice, but
where the money gonna come from?
Well, he's talking about from AI. He's talking about AI is going to bring so much wealth that we should be able to take the taxes from the robots and the AI. Yeah, taxes. Yeah, but from the AI and the robots.
Yeah. Taxes. But let's be honest. Do people want to be taxed or do companies want to be taxed?
No, they're not trying to tax people, though. And nobody wants to be taxed. But he's suggesting that companies that are using AI and physical AI, every agent and every robot should be taxed just like it would like a human. So if those things are going to replace jobs, he's basically saying, tax it like a human, use those taxes to pay for our lives.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not that actually works, I don't know. But
I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense to me, right? Because I mean, the whole premise of these robots is that, at least from a business standpoint, is that you have a better cost structure, right?
Right.
If you can replace a robot with a human, the whole thing is they can be more productive. They can work 24 hours a day. Or like I went to a wedding in the middle of Ohio a couple of weeks ago, cornfields all around. And it was at like a farm. It was at a farm, right? Which is kind of crazy, right? In the middle of nowhere. Yeah. And I come outside, I'm getting ready to leave, and I see a robot lawnmower. It had been out there all day. Automatic, bro. Automatic cutting grass. It had been out there all day, mind you. I had got to the venue around 11 o'clock in the morning because I was dropping off food to the bride and groom, just running errands, and I saw it. Yeah. I was like, okay, that's interesting. And it was just going around doing a little pattern, kind of like a robot vacuum. If you ever seen a robot vacuum in a house, it was very similar to that, but it was cutting the grass. Bro, by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock that night, the robot vacuum the lawnmower was still working. It was still cutting the grass at 11 o'clock at night. And so it makes sense to me that if you're going to have these robots, and then that's just one small example of some rural farmer in the middle of Ohio just choosing to use a robot to cut his grass versus having some employee sit out there for several hours and cut it. That's just a very small example. But it makes sense to me that if you're going to use these robots to replace human, which that is a human job that otherwise a human would be doing, that you do kind of have to tax them a little bit differently. So that logically does make sense. How you do it mechanically, I mean, that's for the IRS to figure out, right? But logically, that does make sense to me. I mean, because we're starting to see it. And again, just as simple as a lawnmower, right? But what does that start to look like in other areas of the economy?
Right. Yeah. Autonomous cars and autonomous truck drivers and all these different things. And people think they're just going to get these fleets and they're just going to replace everybody. And then everybody else is just going to be on the sidelines. Like, I
think there's going to be a tough argument, right? Because the president is going to be that this isn't, at least in terms of physical AI, these are just an evolution of machines. So when we talk about the humanoids, the robots, or whatever that we envision, some here, but are coming, the autonomous vehicles, those are just an evolution of machines. And I think, people are going to probably point to, say, for example, like in agriculture, right? You have, I forget what the machine, it's not like a bulldozer or whatever, but what they use to like lay the grain and, the seeds, or even the tools that they use to water. When they introduced that, these farms became extremely more productive because it was replacing human beings who had to do that by hand before. That machine was not taxed.
The thing that I think might be different, and I see your point. I do see your point. And don't get it twisted. I don't think that companies are going to lay down and not say anything. They're probably going to say something along the lines of that. I think the key piece might be the intelligence factor. Like, I don't know if that matters, but the the intelligence factor. If it's just a machine that you have to that's just repeating the same thing over and over again, it's a little bit different than something that's autonomous and requires some level of intelligence to operate. Meaning that most machines, if they're not perfectly placed or they're not perfectly set up or something happens, they'll be thrown off in some type of way. But when you add intelligence, that is the evolution of a machine. But at that point, that is, I guess I don't know. It is a good point that machines got better and those did replace jobs at one point, but we were able to adapt because one, we were still able to do certain jobs that machines couldn't do, especially if they required thinking. And I think what this might be focused on is jobs that require intelligence and or thinking. And that could be different than, because I guess I don't know what we have past that. If we don't have intelligence and thinking to offer to the system, then I don't know what else we have. If Yeah, what else do we have as far as agency? Something that we can use to take control of our lives, and but
We need some solution. I've always been clear about my doomsday feeling about AI and the fact that I thought it was going to decimate a bunch of jobs. I'm still bullish on that. I just don't see how it doesn't. And I get the comparison to like your point, Brylan, about the machine and the farmer. But the reality is technology has always killed jobs. That's never been a secret. It has always done, is it, right? I mean, think about it. When the elevator first came out, it was somebody who was on there who was responsible for pushing a button, right? And then you have better sensor,
yeah,
better technology to prevent, the elevator from dropping to the bottom floor. And now you don't need that person. So technology has always been about eroding jobs. I think what makes this technology different, to me at least, is that it is both horizontal and vertically deep. Meaning, like that farm machine affected the farm. We're talking about a piece of technology that can affect the farm. They can affect the office. They can affect the doctor office. They can affect the pharmacist. They can
yeah,
affect
the spread.
the taxi driver. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you're seeing this kind of a multi-pronged, I don't want to say attack, but multi-pronged approach where you have this technology horizontally and vertically rolling out to all these different industries. And again, if America does what it does best, which is we innovate, we iterate constantly till we can't do it no more. If we are successful at that, then I think the end result would be to replace these jobs. I don't see how we take this technology all the way without it. To me, that would be a failure of the technology. To me, the whole purpose of these robots is to build an automated factory that need as least amount of humans as possible. Otherwise, like, we're just marginally improving stuff. And I don't even think that's the culture of America. I think our objective is to be as innovative as we possibly can. But again, I'm hopeful that we are successful in that attempt. But to me, the side effect of that is what we should be continuously having a conversation about, because I think that's real. And I think we're seeing it even now, like early college grads. And maybe it's more than just AI, right? It is more than just that. Right. But they're struggling to find jobs.
Yeah,
That's a real fact. Subjective. That's really what's happening right now. There's something about why that is.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope wherever this is all going, we can, in my ideal world or my ideal future, we could all have more time to focus on our health. We could all have more time to do like activities or play sports. We could all have more time with our family and friends, and maybe we could choose to do other random hobbies just for the sake of enjoyment. It would be kind of it does seem kind of tricky to determine, because on one hand I'm like, if we can, with all this automation, people should be able to have more. Everybody should be able to have more, because houses and everything should be able to be built way quicker. Buildings, like all types of stuff, should be able to be built way faster and way cheaper. Items and houses and just more than you could imagine. At the same time, there's going to be a question of, well, how much does this person get? And how much does this person get? And how much does this person get? And then that's kind of like, I feel like that's always the part where it's like, even if we have more and everybody has more, people are going to be wondering, well, how come my slice is this, but his slice is that, or her slice is this? And I think that's going to be the tricky part. Is that's going to be tricky. But yeah, guys, it's been a crazy podcast, I feel like. I
Yeah,
mean,
we covered everything, all the current events. There's a lot going on.
I mean, yeah, we covered everything: culture, war, and then technology.
Yep. All right, we'll wrap this one up.
Yeah.
1, 2,